Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new here, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's a brand new Subaru Crosstrek. And today I'm going to share the 7 main issues, or the 7 main concerns that I have with the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek. As someone who used to own one of these, and since then has owned a few other Subarus, driven a lot of the competitors to the Crosstrek, and probably would not buy another one of these anytime soon, I'm going to share the 7 main concerns that I have with this platform. The downfalls, because while this vehicle does have a lot of strengths, a lot of pros, like being one of the safest vehicles you can buy, one of the most practical, and overall quite capable, it's not perfect. It does have its issues. So today we need to talk about that. And if you get anything out of this video, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Do you agree with this list? Do you disagree? I'd love to chat it up down in the comments and see where your thoughts are. And subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, check out the Twin Falls Subaru. They have a huge selection of new and used Subarus. I'll link them down below if you're interested. But also check out Lasfit, today's sponsor. But more on them in just a few minutes. Let's dive right into this review. My first issue is that the Crosstrek is starting to become a pretty expensive subcompact crossover. For this 3rd generation, now in its 3rd model year for 2026, a base model starts at $28,000. After destination and delivery, before a few $1,000s of taxes, of dealership fees, and any extra options that come with the vehicle or that you might want. So you basically can't find one of these for under $30,000 now. And if you want the hybrid, after destination and delivery, but before taxes, options, dealer fees, that's going to start at $35,000. So these aren't as cheap as they used to be. Even the base model now comes with a lot of features that used to be more optional and standard than the higher trim levels just a few years ago. So if you want a Crosstrek for 2026, you're going to have to pay at least $30,000 or potentially a few $1,000s more than the base Honda HR-V or the Mazda CX-30 if those are some of the other Japanese subcompacts that you are considering. My second issue relates to the powertrain that the Crosstrek offers. For 2026, it looks like the 2-liter base model 150 horsepower engine is no longer being offered, which is the engine that I used to have in my premium back when that was the engine across most of the Crosstrek trim level lineups. But now you can only have either this 2.5-liter naturally aspirated boxer engine, or you can have the 2.5-liter naturally aspirated boxer engine with the hybrid. We will address the hybrid concerns in just a few minutes. But I do have to say this 2.5-liter, it's a lot better than the 2-liter. Having 30 extra horsepower really makes a difference. Unfortunately, this still seems to have the thermal control valve instead of a mechanical thermostat. You can tell because underneath the intake manifold in that plenum space, it looks like the space is taken up with what I believe is that TCV valve. So keep that in mind. That could be a potential failure point. Although Subaru seems like they have updated it for the 2025 and 2026 model year, and it seems like they have acknowledged that on some cars that has been an issue. But we need to talk about the horsepower. That's the main concern that I have with this platform. 180 horsepower is decent. When you are driving this vehicle unloaded on flat ground at low altitude, that's not bad. But when you max out the 900-pound payload capacity that this offers, if you have the wilderness trim level and you're towing up to the 3,500 pounds that it's rated to tow, and you're going up a couple degree incline, or you're in the mountains at altitude where air density is less thick and you have less horsepower from the oxygen being burnt in your cylinders, 180 horsepower quickly feels like a lot less than that. And then while it might be more competitive than the HR-V, which only comes with a 2-liter 150 horsepower engine, there's a number of subcompact crossovers that offer a more powerful engine. The hybrids aren't any faster than this, which we'll talk about soon, but this 2.5-liter in my area, about a mile above sea level, it usually does not do much faster than a 10-second 0 to 60. And if you're going uphill, if you're towing, if you have the family loaded down in the vehicle, it's going to quickly feel a little bit less safe because it can't get out of its own way quite as quickly. My third issue is that for the 2026 model year, or this new 3rd generation in general, it's only offered with a CVT transmission. And after owning 3 Subarus, driving hundreds of them, I have no problems with the CVT. I think it's actually well mated to this powertrain, and it fits the vehicle quite well. The characteristics feel natural. Honestly, overall, there's really no issues there. But on my videos, there have been hundreds of you guys who have commented that you would not buy a Subaru until Subaru ditches the CVT transmission. I know a lot of you guys missed the manual that was offered on the lower trim levels of the 1st and 2nd generation Crosstrek, and I've driven one of those. It was literally the funnest Crosstrek I have ever driven. I am really sad that that manual option is no longer around, but even a traditional automatic, not necessarily saying that I want one or I need one on this platform, But a lot of you guys have commented over the last couple of years that you will not buy one of these until it has a traditional automatic. Really, the only issue I have with the CVT is if it fails outside of warranty, it costs about twice as much as it should to replace for some reason. It's a lot more than a regular automatic transmission, and that's kind of a bummer. But before we get to the fourth issue, let's give our channel sponsor Lasfit a huge thanks and shout out and talk about how they can make your Subaru Crosstrek a little bit more convenient, a little bit more comfortable, and quite frankly, almost any other vehicle that you may own, they probably have some aftermarket parts for them to make it better. So this Crosstrek is a limited. It costs $37,000 before the Twin Falls discount of several thousand, and for that you still have incandescent lights on the turn signals and on the dome lights. And then these all-weather mats, which replace the free carpeted mats, they cost $156 on the window sticker, but they don't even cover the dead pedal. They barely have a lip to them. Drinks that you spill are gonna roll right off of this thing. So if you want a far superior mat, check out Lasfit. With code AA20, you get 20% off through the rest of this year. Their mats cost less than the Subaru mats, and for that you get the front, the middle, and the cargo mat for about $150 after discount. Covers way more surface area. The materials are better, made from better qualities, have way more support, and they're gonna hold drinks in place. And there's a reason why we use Lasfit mats on our Subaru and our Toyota, because they are far superior. Honestly, kind of wish I never had to pay for these to begin with. I wish I found the Lasfit mats a lot sooner, to be honest. So I'll link them below if you're interested. Otherwise, let's get on to point number 4. I think the hybrid is going to be a very low volume seller, just like it was on the first and the second generation of the Crosstrek. By having the battery pack, the electric motors, all the connections, you do add a little bit more stability to the vehicle because it weighs more, but at the trade-off is you're probably going to go through tires faster with more low-end torque. Having the battery pack right over the rear does help with stability, but at the cost of losing your cargo space and your spare tire. The hybrids will not have that. And then they barely get better MPG. If we look at the window sticker on this one, it is rated for 27 around town, 33 on the highway. The hybrids usually can get about 34 or 35 on the highway, and then very similar around town. So your highway MPG really is not going to increase, especially where hybrids struggle to help out on the highway. If you only have about a kilowatt hour battery pack, you really don't have enough juice to really propel this vehicle on electric power at highway speeds. So it really only helps around town. So getting 7-8 miles per gallon better, it's going to take a long time to make up the difference of $3,000 of gasoline or investing or paying off your debt or whatever you're going to use that $3,000 difference for. So I think it's going to be a tough wash. Plus, under the hood, it's going to be a little bit more complex. It might be a little bit harder to do your own maintenance. And although this does have more torque and 14 more peak horsepower if it is a hybrid, on my GPS testing with the Forester, going through every trim level, they're only 0.2 of a second faster, and all of that acceleration difference comes at the 0 to 20 mile per hour acceleration mark. Because it weighs more, it slows it down. It basically is a wash for the extra horsepower that it has. And although it's a hybrid, it doesn't feel like the CR-V hybrid or the RAV4 hybrid, which actually is a lot more sporty and really potent. Honestly, the Forester hybrid was kind of disappointing in acceleration, and I fear this is going to be the same thing. The fifth issue is the non-hybrid still has the 11.6-inch diagonal screen. And while this does get better and faster and has a few software updates each year, it still is not my favorite. I would prefer physical HVAC controls. It takes quite a while to actually turn on. To be able to get to the point that I can react with it, although the buttons do actually register a lot faster, you still have to turn off auto start stop every single time. You still have some very small buttons for things that should be bigger, more convenient, like the HVAC controls. So this does actually register a lot faster than it has in the past, but it's still not my favorite screen. It's very glary. You know, the touchscreen aspect sometimes can freeze, sometimes in colder weather, or if there's like an update or something, it can be unusable for seconds at a time. At least we've experienced that, although it's few and far in between. It's just not my favorite thing, and I wish Subaru would do a little bit better than throw this at every model. For issue number 6 and 7, as we wrap up this video, we are going to talk about the main reasons why I sold my Crosstrek and why I probably would not buy another one. At 5'11", I can actually sit back here pretty comfortably. I have good room in front of my knees, a tiny bit of headroom. Even with the sunroof, it makes this big hump, but then there's a cutout for good space. But this vehicle is a sub-compact crossover. A normal compact would even be like the Forester, which some people might think is a small vehicle compared to whatever monstrosity SUV they drive. But this vehicle, in our case, it was easy to outgrow. If you have children, if you have pets, if you drive long distances, you go on road trips, you have a lot of stuff, it's easy to fill up the space that you have. This only has 20 cubic feet of room behind the second row. When you fold down these seats, while they do lay flat, you can basically car camp back here if you can make it fit with your height. It's only 55 cubic feet compared to a crossover, a compact, that's more like 70 to 77 depending on which model you're looking at. So it is kind of easy to outgrow the Crosstrek, and you do have to think long term. If you don't pay in cash for your Crosstrek, if you are going to finance it for 5-7 years, whatever that looks like, keep in mind in 5 to 7 years, are your needs going to change? Additionally, one thing that Subaru should have changed by now is there's still no vents back here. For having a pretty good spacious back seat, there's no vents underneath the seat, which is a huge shame. There's no vents back here, which subcompacts, some of them do have that, or they have the vents underneath. So it is kind of sad, and that is a big letdown, because back here, even though the HVAC has about 4 out of 7 bars right now, I can hardly feel anything back here. My 7th and final issue is that the Crosstrek I owned was one of the most boring vehicles that I have ever owned. But with that, it was also one of the best vehicles I've ever owned. It was reliable, stable, it never left me stranded. It absolutely demolished in the winter, and a lot better than any of the Tacomas and FJ Cruiser I've owned before. The thing did really good, but as a car enthusiast, driving the 2-liter engine with a CVT, it could barely pass semi-trucks, and I do a lot of highway interstate driving. I wanted a vehicle that was a little bit more fun, that had more passing power, that was ultimately larger, and just a better reflection of my personality and what I wanted to drive. And the Crosstrek was kind of boring. I got a really good deal on the premium. When I sold it, I really didn't lose that much because the upfront deal was so good, but it was also in a baby blue color. It didn't look that good, at least not to me. I always wanted the ice silver metallic like this, which is why I'm filming this video today with this specific paint color. But honestly, it was a good vehicle, but for a car enthusiast, it was boring. And if you change out vehicles every couple of years like I do, it can get expensive. So that's why it might be pretty important to buy the vehicle that you know you're going to enjoy. Don't take the shortcuts. If it's only going to cost a little bit more and not make a big difference in the long run, and you're going to be a lot happier keeping the vehicle for many, many years, it's probably worth it. So while my Crosstrek was a great experience, it just was kind of a boring vehicle. Ultimately, I think the Subaru Crosstrek, especially this 3rd generation, is overall as good as it's ever been. Sure, I missed the manual transmission. Sure, I wish it had a more powerful engine. It's also a vehicle that you might be able to outgrow depending on your family situation. You also might get bored of it if you are a car enthusiast. But overall, this is one of the best, most practical, stable vehicles I have ever driven. It handles well. It feels very well put together. After owning 3 new Subarus, I have never had a mechanical issue on any of them. They have been flawless, fantastic vehicles, and the new 2026 model year of Crosstrek should be, no different than that, I would imagine. So do yourself a favor, test drive the competition. Make sure you find the vehicle that feels right for you, because every vehicle has pros and every vehicle has cons. The pros absolutely outweigh the cons on this platform. That's why so many people buy it. That's why the Crosstrek has made such a name for itself in only 3 generations. But still, test drive the competition, because you might find something elsewhere that you like more. But if you don't, buy this, But if you don't, I think this is a fantastic vehicle. So check out the Twin Falls Subaru if you want a great deal on one. Check out Lasfit if you want to upgrade your ride with really good quality floor mats, or LED upgraded lights, or any other accessories at a fantastic price with code AA20. Otherwise, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. With that said, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and see you on the next one.